Hello and welcome to V2V podcast. This is the continuing Survivor series, and I am Alexei. And today we're talking with Natalie, who is a survivor of Discovery Academy and Red Cliff Ascent. Hi, Natalie.
Hi. How's everybody doing?
I hope everyone's doing well. I'm sure doing okay. So why don't you first tell me how you would define TTI?
Yeah. Okay, well, TTI stands for the Troubled Teen Industry. There's a lot of different businesses that are involved in this, but they mostly are wilderness programs and therapeutic boarding schools, which is an acronym, TBS, that are out of home
Right.
and most of the time out of state placements for kids. They make a lot of claims to fix all kinds of things with kids. Mostly it's kids acting up, kids having drug problems. And I'm saying kids, but it's actually usually about 13 to 17-year-olds, so teenagers. But they also take all other kinds of kids too, kids with eating disorders, mental health issues, kids that just don't have anywhere else to go sometimes. So it's just this wide network of businesses. Oh, and also I think sometimes kids from the courts and kids from the foster care system. I'm not entirely sure on that.
Correct.
But
that is correct, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a big industry that I'm just surprised how big it even is in this country.
Yeah. Multi-billion-dollar. So why don't you tell me a little bit about how you got into TTI, or what happened where you were placed in TTI?
Yeah, it would take so long to tell every detail that I could tell, but
Sure.
I think it starts with some dysfunction in your family. That's what I feel happened with me. I really didn't have behavioral problems as a kid when I was young, but when I became a teenager, I was depressed. And I didn't know what depression was until I was probably 24 years old. So I thought, my parents had even asked me, "Are you depressed? We think you have low self-esteem." And I didn't know what that meant because I thought, I'm not sad. I think I look pretty, or I think I'm a good person. So I didn't know what that meant. Yeah. And as I got into my teenage years, the combination of the already angst and depression that I had probably struggled with since I was a very little kid, I also have a very independent personality, and I like adventures.
Sure.
So that I started experimenting with marijuana when I was probably 15. I didn't really fit in Texas. I'm from Texas.
Right.
So that was my thing. That I don't know, I guess that was just my group of kids that I started hanging out with, the stoners, and that was the people that I related with and I felt were accepting of me.
Sure, free thinkers. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I've always gone to places, I guess, where you'd call people free thinkers, and I guess some people get offended by that term, free thinkers, but, I think everyone has their own free thoughts, right? But there is a certain personality that fits that type. So that is exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and so the hard part of this story, and it's hard for me to share, but when I was 15, I experienced 2 rapes, just right couple months within each other, and they were completely unrelated incidents. It was just bad luck, and I was very young, and they were very devastating, both in the details of both of them. And I didn't feel like I had anyone safe to tell that to.
Sure.
The first one I told my friends, but it didn't go well. So I never told my parents, and as soon as these things happened, I started using harder drugs too.
Okay.
Because I was already having this, and I'd already started to be getting in trouble with my parents about the marijuana. Causing it's just causing this thing where I'm internalizing all this shame, and I'm the bad kid and I'm not like the other kids, and it's just over weed. And then as soon as this happened, it just adds to that low self-esteem and what's wrong with you type feeling. So it was just bad timing and bad luck that I met people right only like a week after these things happened that could access harder drugs. So I did start experimenting with that, and then my parents had a very dramatic divorce. So that happened only like a couple months after there were some other issues
right
at home too, like anyway, some other stuff, abuse happened with adults. And so, but anyway, not with my parents or my family. But so my family is also exploding at the same time that all this other stuff is happening to me, though. So it's
your entire environment is being torn apart. Like when you need support most, and you kind of need a foundation, your entire world is kind of being torn apart at home.
That's
anyway.
Exactly.
I'm quite familiar with this actually. Yeah. Our stories are quite identical, but yeah, keep going.
It feels good that you can relate. Yeah, so that's what was going on. My parents both remarried very quickly. It's within a year of the divorce, they were both, even like months of the divorce, they were both remarried. So that's also very unsettling, the power relationship. And now I'm 17, and it was a very traumatic separation and divorce too. It just didn't go well. So with all this happening, I had actually stopped experimenting with the harder drugs after the divorce stuff happened, but now it's another year later. The divorce was in 2005, and we're in 2006, and I had a boyfriend my dad really didn't like, that he wasn't a good guy, that I met in 2006, that started me back on meth, which I had tried after the rape. So that's really scary for parents and for a lot of people in this country. You hear meth, and there's so much stigma there. So I did start with the meth again, and there was also there's an incident at my school, and that was what happened, and that's where we get to the point of where I go into the hands of TTI, where I had an issue at school where I was caught high at school on benzos, which I hate benzos, and I've only taken twice in my life. And just bad things happen. So in all of that, that's when my parents are really scared. I think they were already really fed up with me and didn't know what to do. Everyone, it has so much stress points. That's why I'm telling the story and even telling the background, because I want to emphasize here that the troubled teen industry can smell this kind of desperation, stress, and trauma, and exploits it.
Oh yeah, big time. This is their case.
Exactly. We are exactly the target. A middle class family. It was before 2008, so there's a little bit more money or ability to get credit. At perfect time, 2006. We were the target, and it's hurtful that I feel that all of us were duped and taken advantage of. So my parents So my parents, it was mostly it was my dad who I guess found, I don't know, I really don't know exactly how he found Redcliffe. I believe that it happened quickly because of the heightened anxiety because of what had happened at school.
Right.
So that's where we get to the point where I had no idea, though, as when I was 17, that I was not expecting to be in an out-of-home placement. I had not done therapy locally. Yeah. That was not, it's just nothing else had been explored. I had gotten to the disciplinary school. I got sent to that for the incident at my regular public school, but I had only been there for like 3 days. And it wasn't really any kind of, it was just the alternative school that the kids that get caught breaking rules go to. So it wasn't any kind of therapeutic thing.
Right.
So I just wasn't expecting, I mean, I was just kind of living my own life as a teenager, and I kind of felt like everyone was acting really kind of like me as a teenager. So anyway, this is the moment where I do want to talk about the kidnapping too. I don't know if you have anything you say about that when you ask people. Would you talk about the kidnapping thing?
Yeah, I think that's really important. I mean, generally this is sort of the part that, interests me. These men are sort of, paid by these programs to come into your house and kidnap you. So please tell me.
It is very, actually kind of fascinating to me too, but in a morbid way for me, and it happened to me, so it was traumatic. And it was, of course, nothing that I had known about prior, even though Brat Camp was on TV and I had seen it before this happened.
Right.
And I never would have thought something like that would happen to me. Or the kidnapping thing. I had no idea. I had been doing my normal routine, and it's 5 a.m, and I'm in my bed, in my childhood bedroom, and these two kind of larger figures are standing in the doorway with the light behind them. And so it's like dark in my room, and I see these silhouettes. And, it's 5, they do it on purpose at 5 a.m, so the child is confused and less able to fight.
Of course,
But that's traumatic. That's, that's an ambush like no other kind of ambush. And it's kind of like your parents are supposed to keep you safe from stuff like that. So,
100%.
But you feel like you deserve it when you're in a situation like I was in. So it was two big types of kind of cop type of people, which I'm really triggered or afraid of police and military types, which is hard for me to admit here, which I guess, publicly, but because of a bad experience. So that was scary. But in situations like this, I just get kind of numb, or everything starts like being super crisp and clear. I don't have fear. I just, in my survival state, my only instinct is to either fight or run or freeze, like you say. And so I did think for a second, can I fight this? And there's no way I could fight it. It's like a big guy, like this 40-year-old guy. That's probably, I don't know if he was armed now, but it has that feel that maybe they're armed. And they pull you out of bed, and, luckily I'm wearing pajamas. Like, I think a lot of kids are in their birthday suit, but, I
was. I remember I was.
I'm sorry.
It's all good.
Yeah. Yeah, and so they just kind of pull you out of bed and tell you that you got to get up and you have a flight to catch. And I don't remember them telling me what state I was going to. They said, I think they told me the name of the city that we were going to be having a connecting flight in. They said we had a flight to Reno. That we had to hurry. I asked what's going on, and they said that I was going to a youth center. I figured when they said that this was connected to the incident at school. So I did at least have some kind of like, okay, I guess I'm getting sent to some rehab or something like that, like whatever 17-year-old thinks that rehab is kind of thing. A youth center. That's what, I thought, okay, I'm going to a youth center. What I imagined was a building when they say a youth center. But we'll get to that. So, and they tell you, I say, well, let me pack my bags, and they say you don't need anything where you're going. So, already starting to set the tone. Okay, so, and they said, but you have to grab your glasses because you'll need that in the field, which again, I was like, okay, it sounded like science class to me or something, and I told them I don't wear my glasses. Because I thought they were ugly and I was a teenager and I wanted to be cool. So, but I grabbed, no, I actually didn't grab them. I refused to grab them. My parents mailed them to me later. So, and that there's a reason why I'm mentioning that detail too. But we'll move on to the, we go on the flight. It was uneventful. I didn't fight at all. And that's another hard thing for me to process, that I don't feel like I always told myself, well, this is practical. This is what your parents had to do because teenagers wouldn't just go on their own, trying to explain it to yourself. But I don't feel that I obviously would not have wanted to go to this, and I do understand my parents were scared, trying to keep me from getting in trouble with the law. At the point we were at, I even feel like an out-of-home placement might have been the correct thing to do, just because of the situation with the remarriages. But it should have, I don't want to say should have, I wish that I could have had been given the respect to have a say in that process. And given the understanding that I'm not this bad kid, that not, assumed that I'm this bad kid. That's what it makes you feel like. So, it was uneventful. It was odd too that they bought me a pack of cigarettes, my last smoke, so that again is setting the tone.
Fuck.
Like, okay, well, I'm 17 and that's not really legal, but then it was a pack of Marlboro Reds and let me choose. And, they got me fast food or something and told me it was my last meal. Because once you had to drive out to this site, because I believe where we flew into Reno and then Las Vegas. And the whole time I'm looking for, opportunities to just run. I'm not really scared, but I'm thinking you need to take your chance now. And there was one opportunity in Reno, and I've thought about it so many times.
Yeah,
I should have just tried. Man, I had $40 on me still. But that creates such a safety situation for a 17-year-old in a place they've never been with $40 on them.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a daunting thing. It's a daunting thing to run away too. It's a daunting thing, Inevitably, you're going to get abused. It's just going to happen. That's going to happen. It's part of it, it seems so.
Anyway. But any way you go, right? You're running into that.
Right. No, it's true. I mean, you can't escape it. You're going to abuse either way. You're a teen and you're making either a choice to choose the abuse or, you're going to another place where, you're not going to really have any say in the abuse at all. Anyway, keep going. So you get to this site.
Completely agree. So, yeah.
You get to Las Vegas. Yeah.
We get to Vegas, and that's when you got to take your car drive out to this rural location, because these places aren't just in cities. So I still wasn't figuring out what's going on, though. I'm from a city. I grew up in a metroplex, in the Dallas-Fort Worth metroplex, so I had no concept of rural life, which I now live a great rural life. So I get it now, but, I thought we're going to some building, but civilization is dropping off. I think we passed over the border of Nevada and Utah and get into southern Utah. Okay. And we drive up to this, it was like a double wide, from what I remember. It was very small building, so that was weird. Because I thought I was going to a center, and this is a double wide in the middle of the desert.
Right.
Okay. So, that's when my transporters, I believe they call themselves escorts, dropped me off and said goodbye. And definitely not your first day of kindergarten. It's almost like, it's like your parents should have said goodbye to you, I guess. But anyway, my parents said bye to me while the transporters were taking me out. But anyway.
While you're being kidnapped, yes. Okay, cool. Courtesy.
Because some kids don't. Some kids' parents are present, and they think they're just being kidnapped for the sex trade, but,
No, my parents were not at the location that I was kidnapped from. So, yeah, I didn't get that.
I'm so sorry.
But anyway, no, don't worry about it. That's okay. No, this isn't about me. This is about you. Please keep going.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that too. So, let's see. So, and I wanted to explain this whole intake process so people really get an understanding of what it's like for this child's experience. Still, it's all just unclear to me what's going on, and my fear senses weren't up. I was just numb. We get into this little office, and they show me a list of rules. I didn't like a few of the rules. I'm already starting to see, okay, which ones of these can I break?
Right.
But I had no idea what I was in for. And then some of the rules were feeling really weird to me. I believe, one is that you have to ask permission to do anything. And for wilderness, that is a real legitimate safety thing, where you can't let a kid walk off into this nothingness, which I believe some programs are better at monitoring children and where they are in the desert than others. Red Cliff, I believe, actually did try and make sure that no one wandered off. So we had to ask permission to do anything. But then there's also, here I'm still justifying to myself, and there are legitimate reasons for these rules, but then it's also, I don't know if that is completely, we had to ask permission to go to the bathroom, and all kinds of, it's just, if it's completely necessary to do this, think about what you're doing, that how demoralizing it is to have to ask permission to go to the bathroom.
And kind of disabling, particularly for long term. If you're in this long term and you're having to ask permission for everything, this is incredibly, it's almost like child debilitating, it's making you regress.
Exactly. I didn't feel I was 17 and a half years old. That's another point that I'll mention, that this was done without my consent, and I knew that my parents did this because this was their last chance in the timing. So I feel now that I got kind of lucky, because the younger kids are so affected in their education. I at least was basically done with high school. Because I was always ahead in school. So I really only needed a few credits. But anyway, so my consent was not needed. But as we were saying, you know, I'm 17 and a half years old. It really is the developmental time to start learning to be independent, not regressing, like you said. And we missed out on a really important developmental time, you and I and everyone else who's been in this teen industry. And it's not a normal situation where you learn life skills or where you learn healthy relationships with your peers.
No, it's not.
It's an institution. It's a prison-like situation with the social situation.
Yeah.
So at this point where I'm reading these rules, you know, there were a few others that put me off, but I can't recall any of the others now except for the ask permission to do stuff. Oh, and one, actually another one was you won't ask where you're going or what time it is, ever. Or basically, I think it was just you won't ask any questions. Now that if I remember correctly, but what that mostly applied to is we were never allowed to ask, like, where we were hiking to, what time it was. Which I haven't even thought about that detail in so long, but at this point in time, like, at the time I justified it to myself that they didn't want annoying questions from kids, like, are we there yet? Are we there yet?
Right,
you know, but now I have to wonder how healthy that is.
I think it's incredibly unhealthy, but anyway.
Yeah. So I signed the rules, agreeing to them, because what other choice do you have?
Right.
Now they walk me over to, there's a computer desk in one corner and a small bathroom room in the other corner, and I remember seeing on the computer a picture of a dog, and it said something like, if you try to run, he'll find you, type thing. So intimidating. And that's what I saw right before they strip search you, which is also, again, you justify that, oh, this is rehab. You know, I thought I was at rehab because of the context of the situation. I was not at legitimate substance abuse treatment, and I know that now. I'm very confident in saying that now. But at the time, that's what I thought I was at. So you think, okay, well, they're making sure that we're not sneaking drugs in. But it's still, like, not cool. You know, you're still, especially with my background and what I've shared already on this,
of course,
about my trauma, that it's just another situation where I have no choice, but revealing that and, you know, doing the whole squat or all of that. And now I question, like, who was that was there monitoring this? Most of the employees are just, like, college students, you know, in between 20, 30 years old.
They are not treatment, they have no sort of authority to be doing that to you. You know, no one has any type of sort of certification to be asking you to strip search, squat, and cough, you know? I'm pretty certain of that.
I agree. I would like someone to be like a police officer or something if they really have to do that. Like someone who had an intense background in investigation before they become hired, like police do. And I don't think that that's what happened. I don't have trust there that was the case. I don't remember specifically the person who was in that office. I don't think I ever encountered them again. It was a female. I don't remember if there was any men, like, in the rest of the office but, so that's what they do. And then I think they dress you up in the outfit after your strip search. I'm pretty sure they put you in the clothes. So it's just like a white t-shirt and khakis that you wear for the rest of the time. And then they blindfold you.
Okay.
So that's the next part. They blindfold you. So that, again, they justify their theme here, as, you know, we don't want you to know where you are so you won't run away.
Right.
But we were already so remote that was not credible.
Yeah. That's not really an option. That doesn't seem logical at all to me.
Plus, I had no idea where I really was anyway. It was an out-of-state placement that I wasn't told what was going on at all. Like, I had no...
You're already blindfolded and disorientated, and then you're blindfolded again. I know, yeah, totally.
Exactly. So I don't see a legitimate reason for that now. So they get you in the back of this SUV and blindfold you. So, and then we start, and I still think we're going to a building, which is crazy. That, I really didn't have any thoughts in my head of like, why are they doing this? Except I was just completely numb and just complying, like, for my safety.
Sure.
That's what you do when you have no other options to keep yourself safe. So,
yeah.
It was quite a long drive. They don't tell you the time, but I was quite sure it was at least an hour. Then you get out of the car and you remove the blindfold and you see this primitive campsite, which I'm from a city, so I'd never been to a campsite or a situation like this. And the first thing I saw when I removed the blindfold was a girl in a red jumpsuit, and I asked why she was in the jumpsuit because everyone else was wearing the white t-shirts and khakis, and someone told me that she tried to run a couple days ago, and that's what they do to runners.
Right. Make you bright and colorful and different from everyone else. Yeah.
Well, it's kind of a shaming, embarrassment type thing.
Sure.
And also, and again, you justify that for safety, they need to be easily spotted, which that may be true in some ways. It's just that any institution does these types of things so the institution runs smoothly. But it's really hard on your soul. Especially if you don't consent to it.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Agreed.
So, yeah.
It's very psychologically damaging. It's very psychologically damaging for a teen. You know, particularly
and you don't even know.
Go ahead, sorry.
Well, no, you're right. It's so damaging, and you don't know how bad it is. Until so much later when it manifests.
Yeah.
Or I did know, but I told myself all these things to protect my image of my world around me,
Sure.
But I did always know that this was a profit type thing and that I wasn't being treated the way I should have been treated, but I didn't know how bad it actually was.
So you get to this camp and you're probably told to make a pack or something, right?
Yeah, you're right. You get to the campsite and they take you to some kind of beginner campsite initially. So where the first thing they did was teach me where the latrine was, the hole that you go to the bathroom in, and then they taught me how to get my bow drill set. That was the first thing I did, which that was kind of scary too. At Red Cliff, there's a phase system where you have to make it through 8 phases before you graduate, and that was one of my first questions: is when do I leave? And they tell you, well, that's up to you. That was always the response to that question. Well, that's up to you and your therapist. And you have to make it through these phases to be able to graduate. And you have to achieve 2 bow drill fires per each phase to move up to the next one.
Okay. Does that mean you have to make a fire?
You have to make 2 fires to move up to each next phase.
Okay.
But with sticks. If the bow drill method is where you use a root as a fireboard that you place on the ground, and then you have a bow in your hand, and there's a spindle that you use the bow to spin onto your root that's laying on the ground, and it creates a spark, which you then blow into a flame. And that's actually
Okay.
a positive thing for me. It was a good experience to learn how to do that. It's just that
Sure.
it's very daunting when you just get dropped, dumped in this campsite, and they tell you, well, you have to make 16 of these fires before you get out of here, girl. And I'm watching another kid struggle to do it, just struggle. And they're like, everyone gets it after a while. And I'm like, oh my God, what is going on? It's not anything that I would have imagined. So
yeah, it's not like you're at a place and they're like, okay, well, come on out. We're going to show you how to do this. And then they show you how to do it, and you get it, and that's cool, and that's because you got it, and that's cool. It's not like that. This is like a pressure thing, too, because everyone else is counting on you to make this fire as well. And I seem to sort of feel that from what I know about wilderness therapy is that it's very sort of related where everyone sort of has to work as one in the group. And if everyone's not working as one, everyone has to stop as well and deal with that one person not working.
That's absolutely true.
And so it's sort of this sort of painful thing where everyone has to be on the same mindset for it to all work well. And no one's going to be that way. So every day you're going to have one person who's not doing as well as everyone else. That's going to be the case.
That's
it's
how
just
it
not.
was.
Yeah.
Well, and that created some mistreatment towards me that I did want to mention too. Since you brought it up, that that's basically the basics of that primitive camp. They teach you these basics, and then you move on to the hiking. So it's only 3 days in this beginner camp, and then at Red Cliff is a very intense physical program. From what I've heard of other people's wilderness experiences, Red Cliff does on average a lot of hiking in comparison to the others. So you get to, and that's basically what you do when you're there. You hike every day, you make a camp, you clean it up.
How long are you hiking per day? How long are you hiking?
You don't have any say in it, and it was anywhere between, the lowest would probably be 3 miles, and you have really heavy packs.
Right.
Especially at the beginning of the week after a food drop. But then the longest we actually did was actually 26 miles it was maybe a 26-hour period, but we had to hike 26 miles because of a miscalculation, which the staff member was actually apologetic to us about. But that was the longest. But there were some other 20-milers in my stay there that was done on purpose.
Right.
So... yeah, and so that gets me to the point of how they put me in this group with 7 boys and only 1 other girl. And that wasn't a good experience for me because I was already used to being bullied at home, and that's how it is with teenage girls and boys and stuff. But I was much physically weaker than them. We had a wagon situation in the beginning where we had to put all our packs on the wagon and share, it was like a team building thing, but that made them hate me because I was physically weaker and not keeping up. But it was good for me because I didn't have to use my crappy pack. They make your pack is not a real pack, it's a tarp that you tie up with cord, and then the straps are old seatbelt straps that you thread through some cord. So you have to learn how to do a pack with a tarp really well, and you get really good at it because they have this other rule where they don't replace gear that you lose, so you better get good at it, and it will hurt real bad if you don't make that thing straight and tight.
Right.
You learn. So, but it was good for me, I guess, in the beginning that we had to put all our packs on the wheels, so all my beginner packs that looked all crappy and sideways were on this wagon, but the boys hated me, and some of them kind of harassed me, and it wasn't a good experience with some of the staff I related to, and were those free thinker type, stoner types that were just outdoor types.
Yeah.
Some of the staff I didn't get along with, and in the beginning there was one staff that just really seemed to favor the boys, and it was a very bad experience with her.
Right.
Being new, and it just really compounded this kind of like fraternity situation that was going on with this group.
Right.
So, and then, you move through, once you become not a new kid anymore, you're able to keep up better, but then you do see the new kids struggle. There's also a medical neglect issue, I feel. It's just my opinion, but all of us got sick to our stomachs and stuff, but there was one girl who got really sick. It was the only other girl in my group, and we just have to stop all the time for her to get sick and then keep hiking, and it doesn't feel good to you either watching that.
No, that's not okay. It reminds me of Aaron Bacon. It reminds me of Aaron Bacon. Have you seen that film?
No, I haven't.
So Aaron Bacon was a young man who died in wilderness therapy, but he complained on hike that he was having stomach pains, and they kept telling him that he was, what's it called, attention seeking and not being real, and he died.
Exactly. And that's what they say, that, oh, you're young, you're just trying to manipulate, or you'll get through this, and it's remote and rural too, so the emergency response is not like in a city where these parents are probably used to quick emergency response, is what I didn't know the situation of emergency response in a rural area. I mean, maybe they had some kind of life flight situation. I really don't know what they do in emergencies.
It would still take time, and are your parents being told that you have someone who's medically trained on staff all the time? And is that the head game that's being played at home while this is all going on there? You're not safe out there.
It's not. And I have a kind of weird medical condition too that when I was a teenager I didn't think about it, but now it's so scary to think back that I was in such a neglectful situation where they wouldn't have responded to my needs, because I did make many other complaints about things that weren't heard. They limit communication or stop communication between you and your parent. That's another thing that I had to highlight here, that especially in the beginning I'm writing these letters, and you think they're being sent to your parents, but they're not. My therapist also kind of got at me, I feel aggressively, when she first met me and said something like, I can tell you've been raped. She forced me to write a disclosure letter, and that I believed was sent to my parents, and I've only just learned in the past year that apparently it was not sent. And what my parents believed was they didn't know. I believed for 12 years that they knew about my trauma, and still the way that they, it's very, it's just a mind trip. It really is. That I was misled like that.
Extremely deceptive. Yeah, that's extremely deceptive. And you shouldn't be forced to write out your trauma in that way either. That's fucking disgusting.
You shouldn't, and that I really need to highlight that these programs need to be more trauma-informed. That's the model that I feel works for me. It's called the trauma-informed care model. It, of course, I guess doesn't work for people that don't have trauma, but everyone, almost all the students who go to this program have been kidnapped. A responsible program is going to be trauma-informed and allow the child the space to process that kidnapping. I wrote about the kidnapping in my letters. No one saw the letters. My therapist didn't let me process it with her. And they make it seem like you deserve that. You're the only person who got yourself here. That you accept that. It's and then combined with my drug history, which I now understand was people are very scared of these substances, but I was not like a heavy user here. I had used this scary drug a handful of times, and I was a stoner.
I feel like that's very common with a lot of us, though. I feel like I was forced to say I was a drug addict almost every day there.
Exactly.
And yet I probably used a handful of times when I was able to. And in those situations it was self-medication. You know? Like, it's very different when you're a teen, too. You're experimental. That's kind of what you do. Everyone else is doing it, too. You know, some of them are better at... Some of them are better at getting away with it, you know, and some of them are more controlled with it. I just wasn't, you know. I'm sure that, you know, at times you felt that you weren't too. But, I mean, like, we didn't have access to these things. We weren't able to use them regularly enough to be addicts, you know.
No. I was so uneducated on drugs at the time, too, which is, I can't believe that I used meth and didn't even know what it was. I honestly didn't. But luckily I didn't develop any. I don't like the types of drugs that create really bad withdrawals and stuff, and it just wasn't a pattern of use, it was just starting, and it really was appropriate to stop that, to address it, to work through it, but to shame it, the way that it was addressed in my situation was very inappropriate, and a legitimate substance abuse treatment would have been appropriate, I feel. But I don't know that, you know, I would have had to agree to that voluntarily for that to be legitimate as well, which I do feel at the time I might have, because I was kind of in a bad situation at home. But you can say what would have happened. I don't know. So anyway, where were we on the...
So can I just ask you a question quickly?
Yeah.
So when you're at a camp out in the wilderness and your therapist comes, do you do therapy at the camp?
Yeah, that's a good question. So for programs that say they're therapeutic, you don't have a lot of one-on-one time with a therapist. The staff that hike you around are not therapists. They're usually just like wilderness type people who like outdoors. And they are the people who spend the bulk of the time with you. The therapist visit, it was once weekly, and you'd have maybe like an hour session with your therapist. That's all it was, because we didn't have any other forms of communication. I mean, I don't think a cell phone would have even worked out there. So she came about, once a week for an hour. And did you kind of feel like that this was like your only person to kind of communicate your way to get out? Like, and this hour, and that you're like your only advocate almost in a way, and that you only got an hour, like, per week to be with this person, like when all this hellacious shit was going on? Yeah, well, and they make it sound like the therapist is, you know, they hold the keys to your freedom, basically, is how they put it. Because they'll say even if you get through the phases, your therapist will decide if you leave or not.
Right.
Which was true. And at the time, I did wonder whether the therapist had some kind of incentive here, like, are they just keeping kids for longer because money, their parents are willing to pay for it, or...
Well, also, you're cut off from any of that discussion anyway, and it's like this once a week thing where you get to ask a question, and then that's cut off pretty much anyway, you know, or gaslit in some way, you know. It's like it's so weird.
Yeah, the kind of what I now believe to be emotional abuse. Tactics done on me, and I really thought it was therapy, you know, because I thought I was doing rehab. And if it had just been wilderness, there was a lot of positive in it. Some of it was actually good for me. So, but that betrayal on the therapist has been really hard to deal with.
So how do you get out of this place and end up at this place, Red Cliff? And what is Red Cliff?
Well, Red Cliff's a wilderness program, and then they have a sister boarding school. I believe it's owned by the same people. I'm not entirely sure how they're connected, but they're connected somehow.
So you're at Red Cliff at this point in the story, then?
I'm still at Red Cliff, but I mean, that's a lot of what I wanted to say at Red Cliff. I wanted to say, you know, I was very desperate to leave.
Yeah.
But it would have been positive if my safety complaints would have been heard, if harassment from the boys would have been addressed more, if it was more trauma-informed, and if it had just ended at Wilderness and I had come back to a stable situation at home, that could have been really positive for me. But there was no, like, family therapy, in my opinion. It's all about the child and them being the problem. You really feel that you're the problem child. And also due to the timing, due to the timing of my placement, I did feel like I was, like, being, like, got rid of, like, gotten out of the way, basically. So anyway, that's why we get to the therapeutic boarding school called
So hold on
Academy.
one second though. Before we do that, how many of the kids who were at Red Cliff are going on to Discovery?
That's another good point. Several of the fellow students from Red Cliff actually attended Discovery Academy at the same time as me after. It was a very common thing where the parents of children placed in Red Cliff were encouraged to place them at Discovery Academy after their Red Cliff graduation.
Okay.
Which wasn't something I was aware of when I first came to Red Cliff, but when you get closer to graduation, they start, like, talking it up. It's really, they start talking about the food, how it'll be so good when you get out of Wilderness and don't have to eat Wilderness food, and how good the food is at Discovery Academy. How, like, your other friends from Wilderness are there type stuff, which, unfortunately, my transition to Discovery Academy was handled very poorly because I had an incident with another student where, I had, like, kind of a relationship with another student, like, with a boy that, when I started at Discovery Academy, he was already there. So I kind of started at Discovery Academy with a reputation, basically, because one of the staff members from Red Cliff, that same problem staff member, had, like, a picture of me that was a group photo, and she showed it to all the other girls at Discovery Academy. No. And then some of the boys already knew me, so it was, like, the worst thing you can imagine for a 17-year-old girl who was already bullied, already had this trauma, to then start, like, with this reputation basically at this boarding school where it's a lockdown facility.
Right.
So it's this thing, and you have to wonder, with this thing where they really encourage going from Wilderness placement to boarding school placement, if Wilderness, like, is supposed to work, then why do you have to go to the boarding school too? Number one. Number two, I didn't feel that it was handled, like, in a way. I actually agreed to it because I didn't feel like there was a good place for me to go back home to, basically. The home situation was not good.
Sure.
And at the time, so I didn't know what I was getting into. I was feeling positive at the end of Wilderness, and I didn't understand the emotional abuse that was going on at the time. So, I agreed to it, but I had believed that, I don't know, I just thought that my parents would, like, I guess, spend more time with me before they took me, like, straight from the Wilderness to the boarding school, and we stopped at Walmart to get my nails done, and then might have had, like, lunch somewhere. So it just, I didn't understand that it was this, like, one to the other thing. Like, I was feeling kind of good about myself because they do at least say, like, you graduated this program, and it's very jarring to go from this Wilderness situation where you're hiking, probably, I would say, average 7 to 8 miles a day. Like, it was definitely normal to hike 15 miles a day with 60-pound packs to go to this lockdown facility.
Yeah, that's such a different like environment change all of a sudden. That's crazy. Such a head spot.
It is. Just as even a visual experience, but the rules are kind of similar, so that's something that like you still have to ask permission to do everything, but now you're in this locked in situation with other kids who are also going through really hard things.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just remember, like, I don't remember my dad and his wife even going into the school when they dropped me off, so I don't know if they went there before or I don't know, but
right.
They dropped me off, and you know, I was so happy to have a shower because at Redcliffe you don't shower the entire time. Well, they shower you before you graduate, so you look clean for your parents. But you don't shower the whole time. It's disgusting. They only give you one pair of underwear a week. I did want to mention that because it's disgusting and neglectful.
Yeah, that's awful.
Disgusting. So, and you're not showering, and the boys also smell gross.
Right. But also, I mean, you're a female. You have menstrual cycles too. I mean, you're dealing with everything like that too. You know,
that
I mean,
was horrible. Oh, they handled that horrible too. They made you burn your female like products on the fire in front of all the boys. It was so embarrassing. I felt so.
Oh.
It was gross. So. But it's either that or I guess carry it. So,
right.
So it was nice to go to boarding school and have a shower and have, like, I guess what I wouldn't call it normal food now because it's not the kind of food that I would like to eat now, but, food that's not rice and beans.
Right.
You know, because that's all you eat at Wilderness because that's all it's practical. So, you know, at first you're feeling good about everything, but I'm quickly in this situation where I was socially, already kind of not in a good place. And then all these girls are thrown together that have all these issues. It was hard for me that like the eating disorder and the serious mental problems and, aggression and it was crazy that like, it's just putting everyone together in this, where a lot of these fellow students I think good things about. I think they've probably gone on to have successful lives. It was just a mix, like, wow, we've all been thrown into this. There was one girl who I think just like she was just young, and she was 13, and the most of the other girls are 17. So that, or 12, I think, even, to have to go through puberty in that place, I felt so bad for her.
Awful.
There's no guidance at all.
Was there a level system there at Discovery? Or a phase system?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
And that's that's a normal institutional type thing, right? Like, jails and stuff do stuff like that. So there was, and that's familiar from Wilderness, so, there was a phase system, but it was more arbitrary, I think, than Wilderness, where there was a kind of like 2 fires per each phase thing. I was moved through the phases extremely quickly at GA, and there was no rhyme or reason to it for me. It wasn't explained to me why, so I always believed it was so that I would feel like I had more privileges and choose to stay when I turned 18. Because they can't hold you anymore without your consent. And by the time I arrived at Discovery Academy, on August 1st, my birthday's in December, so not too much longer. Until I could free myself. And of course I was planning, there was no way in heck that I was planning on staying, but since we've made it to this point, about the leave when you're 18 thing, it's really scary what they do when you turn 18. In Wilderness, I'm not sure how they handle it if you're out on site, but when you're at the boarding school, they, cause my friend who I met there did turn 18, while I was still there. And so I saw what happened. They don't allow you to have a jacket or go back upstairs to get any of your property, which you hardly have any anything either.
Right.
You just have these stupid, like, you wore a different color T-shirt every day of the week and the khakis, which makes you feel really abnormal and not like other peers that are real in the outside world. But anyway, so they don't.
And it doesn't allow you identity. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
It doesn't.
Well, that's
breaks your identity totally. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But yeah. Okay, go for it. So they allow you to go upstairs, get your little T-shirts and things. Yeah.
No, they don't even let you go upstairs to get the T-shirts. That's what I'm saying. They don't even let you get a jacket.
What?
They don't give you a phone call. They just say, okay, you don't want to sign yourself in, get out. So my friend did try and leave, but she wasn't able to, like, I guess, and I don't want to tell too much of her story, but she had to come back and, how that related to me is that, so she was very dejected, I'm sure, having to sign herself in like that just for, what do? Your only other choice is to hitchhike or prostitute or get kidnapped. Again, you're in a state you've never lived in, you don't have anything. So when you're 18 years old, freshly, like what a crazy, everyone knows what happens to the kids that get kicked out like that on their 18th birthday, and it's just this, you were just done to that by your parents and the institution. So anyway, she signed herself back in for safety, and another weird thing was that they wouldn't let me talk to her after that. They had these things called standing orders, where it could be something like you're forced to have a standing order where a staff watches you eat your whole plate, or it could be a standing order where you aren't allowed to talk to another student or look at them or contact them in any way. So they put me and her and our other friend on this standing order, and I really hadn't done anything, and it was, I don't know if they called it therapeutic or so she could, they didn't tell us. They just said we're on standing order. And I still believe that it was because they didn't want me to know what would happen when I turned 18, or it was somehow related to breaking her down and me down because we were both 18.
Of course, yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. They also wouldn't want you to get a picture of what's on the outside, the second you leave, to figure out where to go, or what to do.
Yeah. Well, and they did kind of drive us around Provo. They took us to the gym.
Where in Provo was this?
Oh, it was like right downtown. That big old church that they have was only blocks away. The downtown area was only a couple blocks. I couldn't tell you which direction it was, but it was not far away at all.
So where I was near the opening that goes up to Sundance, that canyon.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know where that is.
I was at the bottom,
Sundance once. Yeah, I was quite far away from that because I was right downtown.
Yeah.
That was pretty too. That was part of the positive of the experience, that it was really beautiful in Provo. Right. The mountains are really pretty. Yeah,
it's beautiful. But those people are extremely strange.
That and the staff at the boarding school were a lot weirder than the wilderness staff who I could connect with and were comforting to me because they were people like me that were hippie types. But these were all Mormons then working there at that. Yeah. Right. And you just feel so judged because like you're like a bad kid that does drugs to them, and they're not. Some of them were 19 years old, and you're almost 18. Like they're your peers. They're not. They have this weird mentality over you because they're like the prison guards in the prison guard experiment.
Right.
They're probably not highly paid or anything like that.
No, and they're not highly educated. Yeah, and they're exactly. It's so weird. I mean, like I feel like the amount of shit that they learned from all of us was ridiculous, Like just on a day-to-day level, the things that they must have heard coming out of our mouths must have been so shocking to them, It would be. But, that's not our fault. we were prisoners there, and, they were being paid in this. I always have to think about that, too.
Yeah.
There's a level of responsibility that the staff took in all of this. So anyway, keep going. What happened? How did you get out?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that too. Even the wilderness employees that I liked, I kind of feel like you didn't say anything. But
Right.
that's, people got to have a job, and I guess it could be a kind of okay job. I don't know. Not the boarding school. It wasn't a positive environment.
Right.
Things were not going well. My another complaint I have is that there wasn't a continuity of care. I was forced to disclose my trauma, and then the trauma was not addressed whatsoever by the wilderness or the boarding school therapist. The boarding school therapist also did this exposure thing where she got us all in a circle and exposed this other girl and said she's a liar and all this personal information about her, including her health information. So that really scared me, that would happen to me if I disclosed anything to her, which she knew. I believe she knew about my trauma from the other therapist, but I now question that there is even any kind of treatment plan or continuity of care at all.
Yeah.
Which I guess it's for the best, because I definitely don't trust that lady, my boarding school therapist. The therapy just didn't relate to me either, like my personality, or they gave us these books that were these books like some like corporate, like how to climb a corporate ladder type book, and I'm like, how out of touch are these people? Like, what? Like that, and that was my therapy assignment, and I didn't read it. I read like 2 pages, and I'm like, what's this? And like some Dr. Phil book, for real. A Dr. Phil book was my like successful teens or whatever.
Dear.
Was one of my assignments.
That's because Dr. Phil was sponsored by Discovery Academy and sent a few kids to Discovery, so of course he's in Discovery Academy as part of the program. Hey, I'm bald!
Yeah, so that's what we're up to. And these are our lives, it's like almost funny to think about, but this affected the rest of my life.
It's horrendous.
What they
did
is for profit, or just, I have to wonder, is it just profit? Is it some kind of thick, like, power thing? I don't know. But there's a lot of actors involved in this, and it's very entrenched in this country.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
So when did you get out of Discovery? How did you get out of Discovery?
Right.
If you're done talking about it, I mean, it's up to you.
Well, I think, I can kind of close on the note that one of the other things that was so weird is I really believe they put something in the food. And I know that sounds crazy, but I believe we all gained so much weight so quickly. Okay, I got there on August 1st. I left in December. I had gained 45 pounds. I had gone from being like healthy in wilderness, yes, as a teenage girl. They put something in the food, in my opinion.
Were the boys gaining weight, or were they losing weight?
No, the boys were skinny. They were losing weight.
Okay, so I've had this discussion before, and this is a common thing, and it was happening at my program too. It's a debilitating thing for girls. For girls to gain weight, that's extremely harsh, particularly when they're about to exit. That's an extremely harsh thing for them. For boys, it's extremely harsh to lose weight, particularly on exit, and it makes them feel weak. It's debilitating. It's purposeful, and that's so fucked up. That it's so fucked up.
Well, yeah, and you're in complete control. Like, you can't leave. They're feeding you. They're telling you when to sleep, when to go to the bathroom, when you're doing quote-unquote school, which I didn't touch on that, so I'll touch on that. The school was a joke, and the teachers, my teacher was dying. She had cancer, and she would take pills and fall asleep and die. Or not die, but she was going to pass away soon.
Coma.
Fall asleep. She was in a coma, and while we were doing our little workbooks, that's all the school was. And for a place that claims to catch children up on school, I just find that obnoxious, because
Yeah.
They held my credits hostage because I believe a financial situation. So I never got a high school diploma, but luckily I had all my math, science, English credits because I was always ahead in school from my public school days. But I feel so bad for the kids that were taken there at, say, 14 and their education just ruined. That's so life-ruining, especially in this economy and society that we live in, and it's not fair. The children were also drugged, in my opinion. I saw all the other kids going to get Seroquel and lines, and it didn't seem justified, but my parents have always been against stuff like that, so I wasn't drugged. But,
do you know the name of the doctor there?
No, I couldn't tell you at all because I never saw him.
Wow. So were you being given medication there?
No, because my parents didn't consent to that.
Okay.
Yeah, but a lot of parents did, and it was really hard for me to look at the line of kids going to go get the Seroquel.
Yeah.
It was weird. So I felt lucky on that, and I had mentioned the weight issue. So you can see how this is all coming into play where, okay, so I'm done with high school completely. They had me taking distance learning at BYU, which involved me like reading passages of the Book of Mormon and stuff, which I actually found it fascinating, but So I'm not getting anything out of distance learning college at this point, and I've made it through all their phases, and now I'm about to turn 18 years old. I'm in a powder keg with all these other girls that don't fit together really and are forced into a lockdown together, and we're all gaining weight rapidly, and I'm literally looking at the stretch marks, the red marks on my body, like I need to get out of here now before things get bigger. When you're a 17-year-old girl, this is not something you want to see. And it was
it's a nightmare.
So my mom was never in on this really. She wasn't involved in it. She was completely involved in the family situation, but she wasn't, and she didn't stop the kidnapping or me from going to the school, but it was more my dad that was paying for it and kind of like chose it. So because of this kind of thing where they weren't in agreement together as parents, and from what I know, possibly my mom didn't sign the custody papers when my dad did. I'm not sure if that's like exactly what happened, but from my understanding, there's some kind of family law agreements that these programs use to either take guardianship or some kind of custody over the children to also protect themselves legally. So from what I know, my mom didn't sign those, I guess. So she actually technically pulled me from the program, but it was only 3 days before my 18th birthday. So instead of having to go through this whole thing where I'm out in the cold in Utah with nothing, my mom did help me out, and the program was forced to drive me to the airport, and I do kind of believe that was because my mom did still have some kind of legal custody over me. And I was definitely happy to be getting out of there because of you feel very unhealthy too. That was the heaviest I've ever been, and I've never been that weight ever again. And so you're just not very healthy feeling. And I've also sensed like my diet is just like I'm a very like vegetable type person as an adult, like a pre-adult, and they don't serve you healthy food, especially for what your parents are paying for. So, but what I did want to say about leaving, and because my parents weren't in agreement, the school had convinced my dad that what I was told is that I needed to be there for a year, or else I was going to be a meth addict for the rest of my life. I don't know why they chose a year. That seemed arbitrary to me, and it didn't make sense to me again because I was graduated from high school. I'm supposed to be an adult now. I need to learn how to be independent and not be asking permission to use the bathroom. So, but unfortunately, since my dad, I guess, was convinced by them that I needed to be there for at least a year, he was just not happy with me, or I wasn't allowed back in my childhood home. I really don't know all the motivations now, but I was not allowed back in my childhood home where I had been living before I was kidnapped. And my mom had since remarried, but she was living in the same place where I grew up. So that put me in a very bad situation where now I'm now thrown into what was not a positive or healthy living situation for me, especially at the time, which I do really appreciate my mom saving me from the situation. It's just that I was thrown right back into what I was kidnapped from, which was a very dysfunctional and unstable situation for me. And there was no, like, trying to deal with that. Like, I was at these programs for 7 months.
Right.
I don't know what they, paid for, but so anyway, I was not allowed back into my childhood home, and unfortunately was not, I don't know why I want to protect this detail, but I was not able to stay with my mom, so I became homeless, and it was like a month or two after I'd left DA.
Jesus Christ.
So you can imagine the safety situation there, and it was just about as bad as anyone can imagine. And I was extremely depressed. If I was depressed before I went into these programs, that was the most depressed I'd ever been in my life, was right after I was released from DA. I slept probably 17 hours a day for the first week that I was out. And your parents look at you and think like, oh, it's this problem kid again. She just wants to sleep all day.
I remember this. Yeah.
And I did what I was supposed to do. I got a job somehow, and a week after getting out, I enrolled into community college, but the situation was just so unstable and emotionally unhealthy that I didn't go back to drugs until I became homeless. But then, unfortunately, an older man saw the situation that I was in, and that's really all I want to say on that. But I was exploited the exact same way, the exact same tactics. Like TTI will smell out your weaknesses, they'll find it, and they'll exploit it. And it's the exact same thing that any other predator out there will do. And unfortunately, I've been preyed on too many times in my life, and it happened too many times before I even became a free, consenting adult.
Yeah.
So,
I agree. I feel the same way.
Yeah. So that was always my biggest sore spot on the TTI. I didn't think about all the emotional abuse until recently, but I was always so upset with them for what happened after how I got thrown into this unstable situation, and they convinced my dad not to, they brainwashed him against me is how I feel.
It's fucking horrendous. It's fucking horrendous that you as a teen would have to go through that. You're torn away from your environment. You're thrown into this crazy environment, which really is gobbledygook, sort of like pseudoscience. And nothing is being fixed at home, meanwhile. In fact, it's getting worse, and your relationships are getting worse. And then you're thrown out and forced back into a situation that isn't doable. You had absolutely no choice in this.
Right, and they take a bad situation and just make your trauma and depression just 10 times worse. I've never...
much worse.
I have no trust. I don't trust anything at all.
Yeah.
And I never really understand how deeply, the troubled teen industry was part of that, but that's a big part of it. I have
I
no
don't,
trust in authority or anything. I don't.
yeah, same, yeah.
You know.
I mean, I think it's all a big sort of lie, and I can't sort of, Anyway, so what do you think would have been a better option for you in closing?
Right. Yeah, so like I said earlier, because the situation was so stressed, what should have happened is prevention, healthy families, or what I wish would have happened, should have, when it got to the point when the placement was chosen when I was 17, it was so critical that an out-of-home placement was the only place I was going to be safe because of the choices that my parents had made in their lives, not my choices. It was too unstable for me to be integrated into their new families that they had created, and it was not safe for me. So I would have for the money that was spent, college prep school, and you have to think, well, any institution I can't trust now. I can't trust therapists. I can't trust any institution, but just college too. That's what saved my life was a friend of mine that even though you're so disconnected from your old peers and you feel so embarrassed, I've never told this story to people. I don't want people to know about this. All the other kids in my public high school thought I was the bad kid, but my old friend from school, encouraged me to go to university with her, and luckily my dad actually did get behind that and helped me pay for it, and that just saved my life. Like that, I went to the dorms. I didn't have to live in my unstable family situation. I loved real school, and I did well. I definitely struggled in college, and I feel I was cheated out of my college experience too because I was just reeling from the trauma, and the trauma didn't end either. I had abusive relationship in college that I feel I was again preyed upon because I was so trained to accept abuse. It was violent and it was really bad. But the college still saved my life. And when I was 17, it's like, well, could I have just gone to college when I was 17? Part of me had always wished my parents had just hiked my ass around the forest themselves. And that's not realistic in today's economy. They have to work, okay? But you wish that could have been what it was.
Yeah, totally. No, I feel you. I feel like I wish that my parents had gone through the program with me. I feel like at that moment, if the community could come together, figure out a way to cover my parents while they go off and get treated too, then that would really help, But anyway, Natalie.
Yeah.
You are super awesome. Are you living a good life now? Are you comfortable? Are you safe?
Thanks for asking. It's really a struggle to function day to day, and I do have a lot of anger and resentment over that, I guess, that I feel I was really cheated out of my potential. But I also have a great life now. I made so much for myself. No thanks to the freaking troubled teen industry. I got a degree. I moved to where I belong, which is not Texas. I'm extremely supported in my career and my work environment. I love my coworkers. I've been able to find, I have a stable long-term relationship.
I'm glad.
I've definitely been having a rough time processing everything though, and it wasn't until 2 years ago that I started processing my trauma at all. Any of it, the whole 5 years. It was 5 years of hell. And so now I never would have been able to say this, do this interview until now or this year. Watching all the other women that have come forward, watching the Larry Nassar case, I watched all of them give their statements. Rachel Denhollander, if it wasn't for her, I don't think I would even be talking about this stuff. But I think I have a great life, and I think we're in a great time.
Yes.
So.
I agree.
Yeah.
So I just want to say thank you so much. And I think you're so brave.
Yeah.
And
thanks for doing this.
You're very, very welcome. If you like this podcast, please like and subscribe. This is Alexei, signing off.